welcome to Procurement Pivots, the podcast for procurement professionals wanting to navigate change successfully and create career success on your own terms. I'm Donna Bowden, procurement career coach and founder of Narrate Your Career.
And I'm Laura Sellers, executive coach for procurement and founder of Coaching for Procurement. And between us, we bring almost 25 years of supporting and working with procurement professionals. And it's fair to say we've navigated many of our own career pivots along the way. And now we're here to help you do the same.
Each episode will share practical strategies, honest conversations, and expert insights to help you confidently tackle the changes and challenges in your procurement career.
Let's get started.
Hi everyone, welcome to our latest episode on Procurement Pivots. Today we're going to be talking about self-reflection, aren't we, Laura?
Yes, a very core component of coaching.
Absolutely. So do you want to share then kind of why did we pick this topic for today?
Absolutely. I think that when it comes to self-reflection, it's something that we hear a lot, taking time to be present, really take that time for yourself. But we live in a really busy world. Procurement are in a very busy role. So being able to take that time for yourself can feel selfish, or it could be like, well, what do you mean self-reflect? So I think that we were talking about where to go with this, and probably the best place to start is what it is and what it isn't. So self-reflection for me is an intentional practice. And it is very different to overthinking. And I am a recovering overthinker. So the difference for me is that when you are self-reflecting, you are being intentional and you're being very curious about how to take yourself forward from a moment. So let's say you come out of a negotiation and it didn't go well. And the overthinker might say, I'm bad at negotiating. I'm rubbish at this. This is terrible. I'm never going to get there. And it's quite self-critical, and it's got a real focus on the identity of the person, what it means about me and my identity. I'm rubbish. I'm not good. And that's obviously from a negative point of view. But with self-reflection, it's more progressive in terms of moving forward. It's more intentional, and it's about, this didn't go well. This negotiation didn't go well. What can I learn from it? What could I do better? And what support do I need? As an example. What about you, Donna?
Yeah, I think it's I would agree with that. Just I guess for me, it's giving yourself that kind of almost like structured environment and space where you're asking yourself like some key questions. And I think for some people actually it can be helpful, doing it at a recurring period of time, for instance. And I know some people really benefit from asking themselves the same types of questions on a weekly, monthly, quarterly basis, whereas I think for others it's much more fluid. But I think it's just really I think just kind of creating that space away from being stuck in the day to day, to allow yourself to ask the right questions and reflect on those answers. But I think it's for me kind of a balanced view as well. It's kind of asking questions maybe about the positives, so what went well in that situation, what went well this month, what went well this quarter, but also looking at where the learnings are as well. So how could I have improved it? What could I do differently going forwards? What would make things better? So I think it's I think for me a lot of it is about just giving yourself that space, creating that time to have that space, because as you say, we are all really busy. Work's busy, out of work's busy. Like it's hard to have that time. And I think like lots of people find it difficult to justify that time, but it just can make such a massive difference. And I say for myself as well, now I would say I've always reflected a lot on my work stuff. So I've always been kind of one of these people that will do a plan for the next day, or review my week, or review my work month. But actually, I wasn't particularly great at self-reflecting on my career, or what is it that I actually want from my life. So I think it's not just doing it for one aspect of your life, but it's actually looking at kind of focusing on the things that are most important to you to kind of to move forward and build that momentum.
Yeah, and like you say, when you do take that time, you can really focus in on what is important, because it's so easy to get caught up in either the mundane or the challenges and the problems that our careers sometimes present for us, especially when we're battling with a work-life balance as well.
Mm.
So it is really important. But I think you said something really interesting earlier as well about taking that time or maybe getting some support around this. And this could be through a coaching conversation, it could be just through bouncing the idea off with somebody else. Because sometimes when we slip into the overthinking rather than the self-reflection, we've only got our own thoughts to contend with. And nobody knows ourselves better than us. But sometimes when we're in that spiral, we miss opportunities, we miss
Mm.
seeing things in a different light. And sometimes actually reflecting and going, actually, what did I do well? There was this bit that didn't go so well, but what did I do well that actually shows that I'm really good at something, or that what my strengths
Mm.
are? So and I think so if you're bouncing the ideas off somebody else, that's great. Or if you're not able to do that for whatever reason, there's also different ways of reflecting. So there could be about journaling is a popular
Mm.
one. I've tried to start a journal 3 times. I probably last a few days. It's just not something that works for me. But my best source of reflection is when I totally take myself out of the work thing, out of what I've got going on at home, and I have an outlet where I can do that. So if I go swimming or something,
Mm.
or if I'm watching tennis, which is something that I love to do. So I think that's the other thing is creating space away, putting some distance in between the thing we're overthinking about or reflecting
Yeah.
about, and actually being intentional, carving out that space and that time, and using different methods of reflecting.
Yeah, definitely. Um, yeah, and as I kind of mentioned before, I think it's actually, looking at those different aspects of your life as well. So not just focusing on, am I hitting my team goals or my key objectives for the year, which I think a lot of people will often, they'll kind of do quite a lot of reflecting on where they are against
Mm.
their work-based goals, but it's actually, what is it that I want from my career, and how am I on track to, to help myself to get to where I want to get to in my career. Or you mentioned work-life balance,
Mm.
what are those things, that you can do, to improve your work-life balance, and how are you giving yourself that opportunity to, I suppose, assess how well it's
Mm.
going and not going, and what still needs focus, and perhaps what doesn't. So I mean, I've journaled myself. I hadn't ever, and probably about 18 months ago, I started journaling, and for a period of time, I did it daily, and I found it really, really beneficial. And I do still do it, but not on a daily basis at all anymore. But for me, that kind of actually writing down the thoughts and
Mm.
kind of taking them from up here and putting them on paper and actually visualizing them and seeing them can be really helpful. But I know, some people love it, but it's not for everyone at all, is it?
Mm.
As you've said.
But I think that's where it comes down to knowing what works for you, because we are all unique and we all have our own ways of finding that outlet that we need, and reflecting. And going back to what you said about work-life balance as well, or knowing about taking the time to know what you want out of your career. I think this is where it can be really difficult to self-reflect, because you've got what's going on in your career and you've got that professional identity, and then you've got the you outside of work, whatever that looks like for you. You might be thinking about your identity as a parent, perhaps, or as
Mhm.
as a partner, as a son or a daughter, and depending on what you've got going on in your life. And so it feels like, well, how can I focus on making an improvement here when I've got this going on, or vice versa? And I think when it comes to coaching conversations that I have, we actually look at the whole person. We look at what's going on in both things and say, well, actually, where are they rubbing against each other? Where are they
Mm.
actually helping each other? Because actually, if we look at the whole holistic view of your career and your life, we can actually take things from one and put it into the other. The things that work well for us in one element, where can it work well for us here? And you
Mm,
can't do that without doing intentional self-reflection because we're just so busy all the time. We're constantly
mm,
on the go. But there is what I'm trying to say, I think, is that there's a bit of a double win, right? Because sometimes you think, well, I can't do that until I've done this on this side of
mm.
the fence. But actually, if we come back to the core of what matters to you, what your values are, etc., it can actually serve both purposes of
Yeah,
work and life.
yeah, totally. And actually, I would say, I don't know whether you experience this with your clients, but
Mm.
a lot of the clients that I work with, they're full of a lot of regret about various different
Mm.
things. But I think like not having created that time, that space to really think more intentionally about how they approach their career and their
Mm.
career kind of their career journey, their career growth, like that, I would say it definitely is one of the biggest regrets that people are coming to me with. They're like, my career's kind of happened to me. I've just allowed it to happen. I've not
Mm.
created it for myself, and not necessarily, not necessarily kind of carved out where it is they've wanted to go. They've just kind
Mm.
of because I think as well, most people still say I fell into procurement. It isn't necessarily that intentional career choice at the beginning, but many people then do stay in it for a long time. But I think many people, they they kind of come to me starting to reflect almost for the first time in their careers. Some of them, some of the conversations we're having, it's the first time they're thinking about those things. And,
Mm.
actually, they're quite regretful that they hadn't started that process earlier because
Mm.
it probably would have enabled them to, move forward in a perhaps more positive direction
Mm.
much earlier rather than staying stuck for a period of time.
Yeah, and maybe that is a procurement wide thing because we do hear that a lot, don't we, around that I just fell into procurement. I think there's a not like me to go deeper in my thoughts, but I think there's a deeper thing there about when you do feel powerless in your career because when you are making career decisions internally, you feel at the mercy or at the hands of, your career progression might feel like it's at the hands of other people in
Mm,
the decision makers, whether you feel like you're a good fit, whether you think that, do you belong? I have a lot of those conversations with some of my clients. And so I think that's where we have to work on actually bringing back that empowerment as to, okay, so these are my circumstances. What are my choices? Because there is always a
mm,
choice. We just don't
yeah.
always know what those choices are because we haven't taken that time to understand. And if you've been working at a place for a long time, and that's not the case for everybody, but some people have been in the same organization for a while, they end up going along with the culture of the organization, or well, these opportunities, I eventually just get put in another role, or I've been there long
Mm,
enough, I might get moved up, and sometimes it can feel like your career happens to you. And
yeah.
and so coming back to what you say about regret, we can regret lots of things, right? You can look back, so we're looking back with the wisdom that we have now, but back at the time, you were doing what felt like the right thing for you. You just didn't have that added insight of knowledge and
Mm,
wisdom of what you have now. But that's where self-reflection can really, really help because it's like, oh, actually, I do have a choice. I can actually see things differently. Well, what if I did do this? What if I did actually look internally or a sideways move? So,
yeah.
and that what if can feel really, really uncertain. It can feel scary, but we do so much other work in coaching to make sure that people are making their choices confidently. And you can only do
Mm,
that when you've reflected on what's important to you.
yeah.
So,
Yeah. And do you find with the clients that you're working with, is there a particular type of individual that is then self-reflecting more than a different type, or are they reaching a certain point and that's then causing them to start self-reflecting a bit more, do you think?
oh, that's such a good question. I would put, I can't put my clients into buckets. They've all got their own unique challenges and things, but the ones that see the greater results are the ones who are able to openly and curiously self-reflect. And what I mean by that is they're willing to come and do the work and go and take action afterwards. Otherwise it's
Mm,
just a nice conversation. I think we might have said that
yeah.
before, but so the type of clients who are willing to do some work on themselves and take responsibility, hold themselves accountable for making those choices do get greater results compounded in the long term, I would say. That's not to say that the other ones don't get great results, but it's that we have to peel back a lot of the layers sometimes. Some people come
Mm,
to coaching, it's courageous in itself to go seek the help of a coach, right?
yeah.
And like you say, especially someone who understands the challenges that you face, but isn't in the weeds of it, isn't in the politics. So that's courageous, right? Because you're coming, but you're coming for results, but it's a partnership. You have to do that work for yourself. But the ones who haven't yet self-reflected, that needs to become a practice. So
Yeah.
that's what we also try and embed from the very start. And it might take some people longer to do that because we really need to break those cycles of overthinking, the cycles of
Mm,
the patterns that they might be seeing. But that's why it does help to have that confidential sounding board of a coach, because something I found that I really enjoy about the coaching and that is one of my strengths is that I'm able to pick up patterns that they might not be seeing themselves.
yeah.
So I had a session this morning, I think it was session 5 that we'd done, and I picked up on something that was said in session 2, and they couldn't see that link, but they
Yeah.
did want, and so, but that's where when you are willing to be vulnerable, be willing
Hmm.
to have that conversation with yourself with the support of a coach, they can help you to see things differently or pick up on things that you didn't realize were there.
Yeah,
So,
no, yeah, absolutely. Um, so if someone came to you feeling quite stuck, sorry, I'm putting you on the spot here with all these questions.
that's all right.
I'm sure you'll get your own back soon.
Yeah.
But if someone came to you kind of feeling maybe stuck in their career or with a particular situation kind of at work, what would your advice be to them in terms of like how can they, if they're not yet in that habit of kind of practicing self-reflection, like
Mm.
how would you encourage them to kind of take that step forward?
Well, when they're coming to coaching, we start with a pre-coaching questionnaire. So I describe it as a stepping stone into coaching because they've had that chance to self-reflect before they come to session 1.
Mhm.
And then we debrief that together. So if they're not already practiced at that, and you know what, I don't think I've ever had a client who hasn't opened up fully in those questionnaires. Like they get to that point where they're like, I've invested or the business has
Mhm.
invested for me. I need to make the most of this. And they come with the things that are in their minds onto paper. And that can be quite an experience in itself because I never realized I thought that way, because they've really
Mhm.
had to force themselves to
Yeah.
think. So the advice is that bring your full self to coaching. If you're gonna invest, it's an investment in yourself.
Yeah.
An investment in yourself is never a waste of time or effort. The results might take longer sometimes than what you might think, depending on what
Yeah.
challenges you've got. But that's the first advice is bring your full self and, use something like that pre-coaching questionnaire to get used to it. And in terms of feeling stuck, I do a lot of foundation work to peel back the layers because the thing that they're feeling stuck by might not actually be what they think it is. It might be hanging on
Mhm.
to something from years earlier. So we do a little bit of work, not therapy work, that's not what we're doing here. It's just about recognizing what's showing up for them in the workplace that actually they can let go of or could let go of.
Mm.
And how do we help them process that so that they can all of a sudden see what other opportunities are open to them. I don't know if that answers your question, but not bad for an on the spot answer, maybe.
I mean, I think, one of the recurring things that's come up, not just in today's episode, but previous episodes that we've recorded, is just life's so busy, isn't it, for
Mm,
everyone? It's just, and it feels like right now, probably even more so than, in previous times. I think people that, are in roles right now, like a lot of people are really feeling that additional pressure. Like
mm,
a lot of things are feeling quite challenging, quite difficult. There's,
mm,
often, there's kind of increased expectations of what procurement's delivering, often with fewer resources, and there's kind of bans on hiring people in when teams are already operating below kind of ideal headcount, etc. So and clearly the world that we're living in right now is massively impacting on
Mm.
on the day-to-day expectations and requirements of procurement. And then
Yeah.
outside of work, life's really busy. So like we're saying that really we all need to create this time um, to self-reflect, but how realistic is that, do you think?
I mean, how realistic is it? I mean, everybody's got their own unique circumstances that can feel really hard to get out of. So I know where I come a cropper. My husband works away. So when he's away and I've got the kids, I have to be really realistic with the time that I've got. And there are many times when I can sometimes think, gosh, I haven't got that opportunity to spend more time doing this or doing that. But actually, I also remind myself of that phrase, is it that if you want something, if you do what you've always done, you'll get what you've always got,
Yeah.
So it can be something as little as 5 minutes to get started with, just that moment for you, writing down your thoughts if journaling's a thing. So I think it is possible, but you've got to tie it into something that you're already doing or that you do as a habit, like habit stacking, I think we call it. So is there a time when you're sat having a coffee in the morning that you can just write down your thoughts onto paper, for example,
Mm.
or before you go to bed is another one. So I think it is possible. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's absolutely possible, but we all only have so many hours in the day. So I think it's kind of it's creating the time, it's prioritizing the time, but it's also probably working out what are you maybe going to not do as a result of spending that time on that thing.
Yeah.
I mean, I've always quite liked a Sunday, for kind of just thinking about the week ahead, the week I've just had. So that is a bit of a habit for me, just kind of almost like planning for that
Mm,
kind of that week ahead. But I think I've definitely recognised as well that particularly when you've got a really busy period in
mm,
your life, whether it's work, whether it's out of work stuff, like just trying to almost now pre-book in some of that kind
mm,
of downtime, reflection time, because I know, when I'm in the thick of it, sometimes it can feel quite overwhelming when you're
mm,
bouncing from one thing to another, in work, out of work, etc. And so I think for me, kind of it almost needs to be blocked out in a way, just kind of to give myself that time to do it. But as you say, this doesn't need to be hours on end. Sometimes just sitting down for a few minutes at a time can just get some of those thoughts out of your head and just allow you to kind of think about things a little bit more rationally. Because I think sometimes when it's up in your head, it's not necessarily kind of it doesn't encourage you to come up with sometimes the most appropriate solution. It
mm.
stays as a kind of as a thought, not an action as a
Yeah, and
result.
I think as well, like you say, when life's so busy, and going back to procurement, who sometimes always feel like they're in a firefighting mode, right? They're always reacting rather than responding,
Mm,
and that's the nature of the organization sometimes, or it is the nature of it at an individual level. But I think that the work that we seek to do is about turning those reactions into responses, and self-reflection is part of the bridge to that. Because if you are able to create some mental space between what's happened and what you do next, then that's where the gold is for me. And, it's little tiny things. We're not talking about big bang behavior changes within a session or within a
mm,
week. It is through small, consistent effort. So it's about how you can attach those reflection points to what you've already got going on. So let's say you've got a meeting that you do regularly with a particular stakeholder, and it's always on a certain day, let's say. Then where can I build in that time, either before or after, to
yeah,
make a change, and then you can measure the improvements that you see
yeah.
against that particular session. So that's also something else, I think. I mean, at the end of the day, it's an art form, I think, self-reflection. I think
Mm,
it's a practice. It's like we've said before with curiosity and other things, it's a muscle you need to really try and work at. So if you think about when you go to the gym, for example, if you're working on toning up or whatever, it's exactly the same when it comes to the mental gym, right? And if you're an overthinker, you can turn that into powerful self-reflection with a few tweaks.
mm,
But it's about tying it in with that intentionality of how you want
definitely.
that to apply to your procurement career, your leadership, and the way
Yeah,
that you deal with people.
yeah, yeah. I think just kind of taking that time out, whether it's quarterly, couple of times a year, like to really think about your career. Like I
Mm.
think that's, yeah, I think a lot of people are, they're thinking about the day to day, the job, not necessarily always as proactively as they would
Mm.
like to, just because of time restrictions. But I think there are many people that they're not at all kind of assessing how things are going for them in their own career,
Mm.
and what aspects are they loving, what aspects are giving them energy, which aspects of their career are draining them, really kind of not serving them anymore at all. And I think when you do kind of when you do give yourself that opportunity to think about those things, like actually then you can start thinking about, okay, what does that mean and how can I act on that, and how
Mm.
could I, in an ideal scenario, how could I create a role for myself, a career for myself, focusing on those things that I love doing, that are giving me
Mm.
energy, and less of the things that are kind of frustrating me. But if you don't have that opportunity, if you're not giving yourself that opportunity to think like that, the chances are you're just going to stay, stuck in this same scenario of, okay, I'm enjoying some of it, but there's a lot that I'm not enjoying, and
Mm.
not moving beyond that. So I would definitely encourage everyone, kind of listening to this today, just to really kind of, maybe book in like a half an hour slot with yourself at some point over the coming weeks, just to really sit down and kind of think about, like, actually, like, what is it that I want for my career, and
Mm.
what do I still love, what's serving me, what's not, how can I then change that? And this isn't necessarily about changing companies, changing roles. It's like actually looking within your role, like, how could you change things to enjoy
Mm.
your role even more than you are right now?
Yeah, and like you say, it's not always about changing roles because sometimes when we're overthinking, we can just start to think, oh, well, the environment's the problem, the role's the problem, I need to make
Yeah,
that change. And sometimes that is the right decision, right? It
yeah,
is. Yeah, I'm not doubting that. But I think you really made an important point there. It's sometimes about pivoting, if we use our lovely word,
yeah.
about pivoting the approach, because actually, if you are reflecting on what's going on at work, it might be
Hmm.
that you can get to a different outcome. It might be that you change your perspective on things, and all of a sudden that opens a gateway to something else. A supplier relationship isn't as tricky because you've gone and actually done some work on actually what can I put away and what actually is here for me to deal with and to work on and reflect and improve on
Mm,
rather than the overthinking spiral. So
yeah,
it is. So I think what we're trying to say is that self-reflection as a practice is valuable for you no matter what. No matter what in your career, no matter what the pivot is that you're seeking to make.
yeah, definitely. I mean, I think it's a gift, actually. It really is. Like,
Mm.
it can really change the dial in such a positive way in so many aspects of our life, not just in our work. And it's just so underrated, like the difference it can make to us. So yeah, I think it's yeah, obviously we're big believers. We wouldn't do what we do, would we,
Very true.
for a living, if we didn't kind of see the impact that it can have on people. So in terms of takeaways, then, kind of for people today, Laura, what would be your kind of your takeaways you would impart today?
The first one for me is back to the beginning about noticing the difference between overthinking and
Mm,
self-reflecting. They're very different, and a lot of the time we can fall into overthinking. So just think about those little tweaks instead of spiraling. Think about being more curious with yourself about asking, well, what have
mm.
I learned? Where am I strong? Where do I need to develop? What do I want? What do I need? So a few open, curious questions to yourself. That's the first takeaway for me. What about you?
Yeah. Well, I think it's I think dependent on who it is that's listening, because obviously some people are already going to be doing some element of this already. Some people are just not kind of not doing this right now. But I think it's just kind of somehow managing to create some time for yourself to do this, and really thinking about, what structure is going to work best for you. Like, actually, could it be journaling? Could it be going and sitting on a bench in the park when the sun's out for 20 minutes one lunchtime? Like, it's actually, what location, what time, what questions are you going to ask yourself? And yeah, I think just almost like, if you can structure that in, or at least just be a bit more kind of considered with when you're going to be doing it. I think, yeah, creating the time in a busy life, I think will actually, it will make a big difference. And do you know what? It will probably actually give you time back as well, because
Yeah.
we spend so much time overthinking, over worrying, concerning ourselves, procrastinating, kind of having all these ideas swimming about in our head without then taking action and without moving forward. So,
Yeah.
just kind of somehow creating that time for yourself. I think, if it's then done and implemented and acted on, like, I do think, like, in many instances, it's going to probably save you quite a lot of time in the long run, actually.
It cuts through the noise, doesn't it? So I think that's a great point there, because you might think that it's a time you don't have, but actually we're just replacing the overthinking with the
Yeah,
self-reflection. So that's a great point. Okay,
yeah.
so that, do you know what? I think that's another subject I'd like to delve into more in different ways, really. But I think that's been a really, really useful conversation. So thank you.
Yeah, definitely. So thank you everyone for tuning
Yeah.
in again. So we will see you next time. So thanks again.
Take care.
Take care. Bye bye.
Thank you for tuning in to Procurement Pivots. We hope today's episode gave you actionable tips to help you to continue to move forward in your procurement career.
If you enjoyed the conversation, follow our episodes, share them with others, and please support us on our social media channels for others that might be interested to tune in.